I live in an apartment complex, having 4 separate doors with a badge access, but sharing the same basement, which is also shared with the market, so that their customers have a place to park their cars. To go down to the basement, you can take one of the 4 elevators of each of the buildings by passing your badge, which you can't use to go back as the door only opens from the inside, through the car entrance by passing your bank card or using the elevator that leads up to the market. To go back to your apartment without passing by the market, there are only 4 doors, one for each building that opens with a code, and not the badge. So, it was around 1 a.m. that I realized that I had forgotten to take out the trash, and since I ate mussels that night, it couldn't wait for tomorrow. The first odd thing that I noticed was that all the lights in the hallway didn't work, which made me uncomfortable but not worried since it was summer, at the perfect time for the maintenance, and also time when most people are not at home. The second odd thing was, in the basement, just when I started pushing the door, the lights that should normally be off this time, they were on. There are these sensors in the basement that turn on the lights when someone enters. Relating it to the electricity issue of the hallway, I continued my way to the bin room. Being a lazy person, I kept a hand on the door while throwing the bag with the other. Just when I left the room, I heard this weird sound. I can't say exactly what it even was now. All I can give you is a description from my memory, using my poor vocabulary, hoping that you'll put it together. So, you know the sound that a person makes when they're in extreme pain, trying to scream but the pain just won't let their voice out, which leads to continuous sound? The last cry of a dying animal calling out to something for help while being eaten by a lion or something. It was that kind of a sound. Whether it came from an animal or a human, I'm not too sure. But now that I think about it, the voice was omnipresent from the second I put my feet in the basement. But I didn't give it any attention since they put all the machinery related to water heating as central heating and God knows what other machineries they keep inside the closed rooms, and they sometimes do abnormal sounds down there. But that sound was clearly from something alive. I could also discern a kind of human voice mixed with the scream of despair thing. And then the bin room door closed loudly behind me, and with it, the mouth of whoever was talking somewhere in the basement, as I can't tell exactly where it came from with the echo. At that time, my heart was beating twice as fast as an average person, but trying to reassure myself, I told myself that it may just be someone coming home after getting drunk, or someone or something hurt him or itself, and was getting transported to the hospital. In both scenarios, I need to offer help, was what I was telling myself. But my brain wasn't functioning correctly due to fear. Or maybe I was just curious or something. Is anyone there? I said. It was a pointless thing to say, and it was the worst decision that I made since I was down there. I heard a sound of what I assumed to be a door or a trunk, which made the scream stop, followed by footsteps. Whoever was making the sound, or making something else make the sound, they were running directly toward me. At that point, I couldn't think of anything but surviving. I ran to my only exit, which was the door, typed the code with my shaking fingers. Red light. I typed it again with my hand shaking even more, and the footsteps closer than ever. It finally went green, and I pushed the door open with all my strength, and then closed it with my whole body. But something was keeping it from closing. It was the person or thing chasing me. I put both legs onto the stairs and used them to put even more power into closing the door. And after a few seconds, it seemed like an eternity, the door finally closed. I stood up again and started climbing up the stairs as fast as I could. I live on the 6th floor, but man, was I motoring up those stairs. When I was at the 3rd or 4th floor, the door opened, and a few seconds later, I could hear someone climbing the same stairs I was climbing. We both couldn't see in the dark, so the last remaining floors left seemed even farther than they are, but I eventually made it to my door. It took me a long time to find the lock, especially with all my body shaking from head to toe, but the person chasing me seemed to have more troubles with the stairs than me, so by the time I opened the door, he was still pretty far away, judging from the sound. The moment I locked the door, I couldn't control any of my muscles and I fell down on my knees. It took me around 15 minutes to regain control of my body and for my brain to become operational again. I didn't tell this to anyone, as I don't even know what that sound came from, who the person chasing me was, and not even why he was behind me. But judging from what happened, I can pretty confidently say that he, she, or it didn't have good intentions. I moved to my father's house when I was 18, due to needing space while I was breaking up with an abusive ex. It was a pretty rough time for me. Mentally, emotionally, the whole shebang. I was what you would describe as an utter mess. The house was lovely, a new build, been around maybe 5-10 years, detached, a small garden, etc. Nothing of the unusual which would make me be like, haunted as fuck. However, it was always cold. Like, even with the heating on, it was cold. My mum did some snooping once, and she described the house as unloved. I don't know if that's relevant, or if she was just being salty, but that's what she said. I was receiving therapy once a week, and was unemployed, due to my mental health, and to be honest, I spent a lot of time just sleeping or weeping. A dream combo, right? I eventually got the strength to pick myself up and to try to make something of myself. And that's when the weird shit started to happen. I had never felt creeped out or uncomfortable in the house. Up until one evening, that is. Me and my bro were in the house just watching something on TV, and we hear this whoosh, followed by like a click and a thud. Turning to look at each other slowly in a what the heck was that kind of thing, we sheepishly peeked our heads around the corner to see the front door was wide open. I quickly ran and shut it because I was in constant fear that my ex would be outside of my house after he threatened me with that after we broke up. Thing is, I was super onto it with locking every single possible lock on that door, and it wasn't my dad because he was out of town. Nobody else had a key, and it was still nighttime. I very quickly went to bed and tried to just pretend that it never happened. The next incident was when I was in bed. I became very fearful of sleeping in the dark at this point. It was like a switch had been flicked on in my head one day that I should be terrified of my room and the dark. I was in an anxiety hole, shaking from being so freaked out, and suddenly the TV downstairs just turns on. Let me just clarify that nobody else but me was in the house at this point. There used to also be a 3-part system to shutting the TV down and closing the cabinet. I run downstairs and, lo and behold, the cabinet is open and the TV is on. Well, that was nope strike 2. I blamed it on an electrical surge though, trying to keep it rational, as you do. The next thing was again in my room. Scared as anything because it's dark and I'm the only person in the house. Out of nowhere, I hear a scream. I full on spasm and leapt out of my bed, turning on every possible light. And nothing. There's absolutely nothing. I look outside and nobody's outside either. I sleep with my light on that night. I also had my keys moved around a lot, and I would leave them in one place and then they would just be somewhere else. I was kind of used to that, to be honest. That to me seemed playful and kind of harmless. However, waking up and finding that a random light in the house was on when I had everything turned off, that was not fun. It escalated in the next few years too. These experiences were not consistent. It was once every few months, and I never really knew when the next one would be. One morning, I woke up, and just as I opened my eyes, I saw this grotesque-looking golem-like creature on the floor of my bedroom, hunched over, looking at me from behind its shoulder. It looked really pissed off and then just evaporated, right in front of me. I blame that one on my eyes adjusting, but honestly, it scared the living shit out of me. But by far, the worst experience I had was 2 years ago. I didn't experience sleep paralysis until I moved into that house, and I was getting it 2 or 4 times a month. And this will forever stay with me. I experienced sleep paralysis while I was lying on my front, and my head to the side. Out of nowhere, my eyes just open, and I'm like, oh shit. It's like I knew that something horrendous was going to happen. I cannot move, and so panic begins to set in. I'm willing my toes to wiggle. I'm mentally screaming, don't you dare close your eyes. Wiggle those toes, or move, or something. And then, I hear running around the landing, childish giggles. And then it happens. Something jumps on me. I feel the pressure of something jump onto my body, and then I feel something press my head into my pillow, to the extent where I can't breathe. Just to clarify, I know a lot of people are like, when you experience sleep paralysis, just go back to sleep, close your eyes. But whenever I did that, I would get this awful sensation of being roughly tickled all over, to the extent where I'd be crying when I eventually woke up. I cave eventually, and I just close my damn eyes, and I get that feeling all over me. I get up. Well, I think I did. And then all of a sudden, I'm back, lying in my bed. Every time I moved and physically felt like I was up and about, I would get, and stay with me here because I have no idea what the hell this was, sucked back into my sleeping body or something. I would scream and I would feel it in my lungs, but each time, I would return back to my bed, the same position. This whole thing felt like it went on for years too, until I just physically threw myself awake. Running downstairs, I began chain smoking and just stood outside, feeling almost violated over what had just happened. I went to have a shower, and when I looked in the mirror, I had red marks all down my ribs from that tickling feeling. Later in the week, the bruises appeared on my legs too, and that freaked me out even more. I ended up getting into a new relationship 2 years ago, and so I had company for the nights my father was away. I finally felt safe for the first time in a long time when my partner stayed over, so didn't really experience anything after that sleep paralysis episode. Thankfully, I'm at university now. I visited over Christmas and the house just felt cold and a bit soulless. Almost feels heavy when you enter the house. They have a lodger staying in my room, so I have no idea if she experiences anything. If anyone has any inkling as to what any of that could have been, then please let me know, because it still weirds me out thinking about it. Anyway, thanks for listening. The following encounter happened to me this week. Please note, I'm a male in his mid-30s, and English, it's not my first language. I remember feeling sick to my stomach, while tears ran down my cheeks into my beard. I was sitting in my car on the side of the highway around midnight, in between two major cities in Europe. Maybe less than an hour earlier, I fought bitterly with my girlfriend. We both got mad at each other. She got passive-aggressive and I began to yell at her. I couldn't stand to be with her that evening, so I got my keys, slammed the door, and off I drove to my apartment in another city, which is also my city of birth. I had to take a break during my drive home. The episodes with my girlfriend woke emotions that were too great for me to ignore. So, I stood there on the highway with my blinking light and no engine turned on. It was silent around me, except the occasional truck passing by and the constant clicking of the blinking light. My body was tight, and in my mind, I ran through the escapade again and again. I hate when that happens, so I decided to just continue driving, as the heavy flow of tears stopped. I turned the key, but I couldn't turn it all the way. I was surprised, but I couldn't turn the key to start the engine. I retried, but there was nothing. The key was stuck again at the same position. I was stubborn and tried several times again, and failed. Thoughts of staying the night on the highway rushed to the forefront of my thoughts. Why? Because I foolishly forgot to grab my cell phone as I was storming out of the apartment, while still yelling at my girlfriend. And now, I had no means to contact the emergency services or roadside assistance. The clicking of the blinking light was like a constant blow with a sledgehammer to my head now, so I shut it off, and I realized for the first time just how dark it was around me. Trucks passed me by within the following minutes, but I didn't want to step out of my car and wave one of the drivers over. I didn't trust them. Don't ask me why. I always hate when people freeze in the midst of a situation that requires action, so I eventually stepped out of my car. It was slightly raining. Obviously, I knew where I was, since I regularly drive on that highway back and forth, and I knew that 2 kilometers ahead was a highway exit. So I figured that I'd walk on the side of the highway up to that exit. There's a gas station, and I hoped the place would still be open, even shortly after midnight. So I closed my car shut and began walking on the other side of the guardrail, away from the road. The road was on my left, and the trees, illuminated by the moonlight, were on my right. I have to confess that I was scared. In fact, I was really scared. I had no particular reason to be afraid, but my mind turned to the shadows from the trees and to men hiding there, watching me with intense-looking eyes and hands ready to grab me. After 15 minutes or so, I began to move up a small hill and the rain turned to snow. It was snowing for a while there, because the earth and the trees were already covered in powder. After yet another while, I saw the exit in the distance. I reached it faster than I thought I would. I must have miscalculated the distance, but that was all right. I was happy to be close to light, people, and a phone that I could use. Right before the exit, there was a bridge that went over the highway. When I was about to pass under the bridge, I saw a person jogging on it. I stopped and looked up in surprise. I only made out a silhouette, but I clearly saw that it was a woman, ponytail, small and athletic build, crossing the bridge. What woman would want to jog around at midnight on a road close to a highway with a wooded area on both sides of the bridge? A few seconds later, she was gone. I looked to see if I could make her out within the darkness, but I couldn't. Still weirded out, I continued walking and passed under the bridge. A couple of meters further down the highway, I took the exit. Now, in order to take the exit by foot, I had to get over the guardrail because there were thick bushes too close to the side of it that I was on. So basically, I was walking on the road down the exit to the gas station. On the right side of me, behind the bushes, there was a trail. If you decided to walk up that trail, you'd arrive back at the bridge that I mentioned. So, I was walking down the exit road slowly, because it was really slippery, but also with a steady pace because I didn't want to get hit by a passing car. And then it happened. Someone jumped on me from behind and pushed me face first to the ground in the middle of the road. I screamed in sudden terror and turned around, ignoring the pain in my chin and right ear. The person was already on their feet again, too. I screamed again in shock and surprised. It was a woman in her mid-20s wearing a jogging attire. It was the same person that I saw minutes earlier on the bridge. She shrieked, and with wide eyes and saliva dripping out of her mouth, she charged at me again. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in my left eye. The woman scratched over my eyes and poked her fingers deep into my left eyeball. I stumbled backwards, and then she began to run at me again, and I threw her against the guardrail, with her back first. The sound of the impact was cringeworthy. I broke down in the middle of the road, clutching my left eye at this point. Moments passed, and I wasn't attacked again, and against all the pain in my eye, I managed to look up, and through tears in both of them, I saw the woman heading up the trail towards the bridge, fast. Adrenaline shot through my body. The pain felt numb as I rushed down the exit road, falling on my rear end several times during the process. I was panicking like an animal. I just wanted to escape that place. I reached the gas station, basically jumping against the door to throw it open. The guy behind the counter was shocked seeing me. I was bleeding a bit, and my eye was swollen shut at that point. To make a long story short, the guy called the police and an ambulance. The officers searched the area but found nobody, and I'm at home now, in the apartment that I inhabit alone, and I'm still terrified. I can't comprehend why the woman attacked me, but I'm pretty sure that she went for a run in the middle of the night just to find a victim like me. When I was about 13, this nice family moved out of their house in the Prescott Country Club, Dewey, Arizona, just down the block from my family. A strange guy moved in, and the condition of the property rapidly deteriorated. The day he moved in, he had a large U-Haul type truck, which was fine, but the thing never left. It stayed parked in that driveway. It also had an extension cord running from the house out to the truck. I thought that was weird. And eventually, there were paint cans all over the yard, a random junk on the side of the house. It was a real mess. This was also not welcome in the small community, but anybody who talked to the guy came away saying that the dude was weird and they needed to tread lightly. I mowed lawns and was hired to do our friend's lawn while they were on an extended vacation. They lived next to this weird guy. Every day when I was sweating my ass off mowing, I could see this weirdo spying on me through his blinds in his living room. He wasn't very good at hiding it, to be honest. And it was every day. I kept looking back at him and giving him weird looks, hoping that he'd just knock it off. Well, fast forward 2 years and my family is watching the 5 p.m. news while we eat dinner, and they start reporting on a developing case where a woman's frozen body was found inside of a freezer, inside a Ryder truck. They showed the house and we all went completely silent and stopped chewing. I ran outside to look down the street, and sure enough, every news agency in the state had a truck parked in the street, the satellite dishes extended, and the cops had everything cornered off. This guy had abducted a 23-year-old woman on a Los Angeles freeway, sexually assaulted her, murdered, and then stored her dead body in a freezer, which eventually went into the truck and was driven to Arizona, where he moved next door to his mother, who, of course, had no idea.